Good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you? And welcome back from your extended vacation. How was it?
Good. I'm back inside of a familiar box here, and
Yes, right.
and it was great. Always good to see family, which was the main
Yeah.
purpose of the trip.
Well, I'm glad that you're refreshed because the field note today that we're discussing on Lead Better, bit of a challenge, I would say. The title of the field note is The Practice of Giving Advance Notice for Workforce Reductions.
Okay,
Such
hey,
a sexy topic. You know, it's
I know.
immediately appealing to all of us.
You set that up as if you were going to make an announcement to me that you were going to use this format.
Yeah. No,
to
no,
go
no,
ahead and make
no.
that announcement. Okay.
No, we're not cutting back on the admired leadership team. Yeah, I think your job is safe. My job is safe, at least for today.
Okay.
But I think the test for you and I today will be, let's say that there is an application for people who might have to make a reduction in force or some equivalently drastic announcement to the public, to their team.
Right.
How would they go about it? But also, would there be any revelation in thinking through the process of what goes on in a reduction of force that we could all apply, that we could all
Sure.
take as a takeaway for today's conversation?
Yeah. So when you're looking at it from the employee's point of view, like why would this even be controversial, right? There's always plenty of reason to let me know. Of course, you would want to mention to that me ahead of time, give me a heads up. And what we're talking about before the media knows, before I'm learning through Twitter, right? Is that the kind of thing we're talking about? It seems a little ridiculous, but the further we go in this social media world that we live in, we hear of more and more people who do in fact let the media and let, for the sake of their shareholders, let shareholders know before the individual employees. So it always does seem really odd when we hear about it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's become so common.
Well, I think that even though Admired Leadership and our parent organization, we work with lots of Fortune 100 companies, multi-billion-dollar companies with tens of thousands of employees. I'm not on the strategic communication side, neither are you. So I don't know that I was acutely aware. I mean, I'm kind of aware, but acutely aware that there are sort of legal requirements for some of these things, or there's obligations to stockholders in terms of these things. And those things obviously have an enormous effect on the fates and fortunes of the organization. So no wonder there is sort of a gravitational pull, which will actually be discussed in tomorrow's field note as well,
Right.
around these things. However, in order to have a going, thriving enterprise, you need to have the support and the trust of the people that are part of it, whether it's 10,000 people in the organization or 7 people in your family.
Right. And so it does make it tricky, and it points out in the field note there are some real reasons why you might be tempted to
Yep.
be able to make those decisions that way. And and what a crummy thing to have to explain to people that it's better to serve the people who have got you to where you are,
right.
instead of your shareholders. But it's something that it's easy to get distracted in this day and age when it seems like so many at the head of the corporate realm seem like they are making decisions that are entirely about their shareholders, right? And so there's some natural pulls there, and there's some natural reasons why it might become a debate, and it might be something that comes up. So you would like to think that around corporate boards table and the conference tables there who are making these decisions, that they would have a value that actually favors those that have given their lives and their time and their energy to the endeavor, instead of just the people who've given their money to it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and look, if you're just evaluating this on the basic way that any of us would feel, I mean, certainly if you were an employee, certainly if you were a stockholder, but like, let's say you had come back from your vacation and I had to give you bad news. And I chose to do it live on a Substack chat, where we're going to talk about the field note and be like, Mikey, guess what? There's some bad news, right? Now, if I gave you that news and you were just like really unsure about how to communicate it to the rest of the family at dinner, but at dinner, your wife says, hey, I heard from my friend Susie that you got laid off, right?
Yeah.
And whether Susie, faithful, I'm assuming, listener to the Lead Better, endeavor
except,
that we do
except
here.
that Susie talks a lot.
Oh, yes, right. And half the time it's not true. But again, your wife would feel like there's a broken level. Like, why am I hearing this from the next door neighbor or whoever and not from you? Right.
Yeah.
And yet this is what happens inside organizations all the time.
Yeah. It feels like betrayal all the way down. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So, but, what aside from that being the lesson, that there's a loyalty, and the loyalty that you feel might feel like you need to take some prominence around protecting the stockholder, because you want the stock price not to suffer as a result of the layoffs going on, right? But anymore, those who trade on a regular basis, layoff news is actually good news these days in the way that the stock market works.
Well, yeah, often.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So if that's the case, then all the more reason why it would be okay to be able to share it with your employee force first. But I guess the temptation is strong. You want to control the message, and you understand that, right? And so does that mean inside the PR arm of the firm, they are going to advocate strongly for letting it out before it kind of leaks out through a disgruntled employee? And that's really the hardest part, right? It's like if you've got to lay off a sizable portion, say you're a large company and you're laying off 5%, and maybe just 10% of those are worrying cases that might announce it somehow to the media before your controlled message goes out the door. And so, police forces do this kind of thing all the time. They say no announcement about victims' names of a particular crime until we're able to talk to the friends and family, right? That's a value-based decision there. And so that even if it does leak in some other way accidentally, you understand why it is that they make those decisions moving forward. They want to be able to protect the privacy of the people who are closest to the victims of the crime. And so we should at least have as much sense as police force, when making those decisions for organizations.
Well, and that's the underlined in bold part of this field note, is that the leader, and I would say the leader then sets the tone for those communications people that you referenced, that they have there's a hierarchy of obligation here. And the first obligation is to the people that make up the organization. I mean, and it's not that they can't handle bad news, it's the way that bad news and possibly, look, there could be people that say, look, I actually think we could get rid of 5% of the people in this organization. We'd be a better organization. And I'll send you a list of names, right? There's some people that they would be like, no, this isn't terrible. I think let's lose a couple of pounds and we're going to be in better shape for the ring tonight. So, but if you as the leader are saying, here's how the obligation chain goes for you, and then for your communications team, then that feeds in. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't moments where there might need to be some kind of a public announcement. And we've seen examples where sometimes there's a series or a stage of things, or sometimes organizations will do things where they're doing buyouts offered for a period of time. And it's clear that the organization is going to go through some constriction. And was I just reading? Oh, well, just for example, many media organizations are doing this. This, by the way, is why I kind of left the regular media about 15 years ago. I'd been in that world for a long time, a couple decades.
Right.
But the Washington Post was offering people, buyouts, and it crosses into the social media world that we spend a lot of time in, which is the guy that was their main TikTok presence was like, I'll take the buyout. He's a young guy, and then he's starting his own media operation by taking the buyout. So a buyout can be a signal. And then if you're having to do reductions, then it's not so much of a shock, but you're communicating all the time internally. And that's the difference here. Now, it's an interesting thing, and this is not to kind of like, I'm sure that the people that are managing directors in our strategic communications department always like to talk to people that need help. But they've got lots of clients, so this is not a commercial. The point is, well, what does a strategic communications consultant do that's different than a PR firm or something else? Well, because they're different capacities. We hardly ever, in helping organizations shape their message, are dealing with the external messaging.
Right.
It's all about how are you communicating inside your organization to your people. And oftentimes we are helping, particularly like in, let's say, a merger. Let's say two hospital systems are merging together. And then you have to have not only the communication that like this part's going to stay, but this part's going to change. And your benefits package gets altered this way. All of those things are highly symbolic about where you stand and where you fit in the new organization. And that's, I think, one of the cool parts about this field note, which is it's not, there's one word underlying this whole thing, and it's trust, right? But in that sense of trust, it's a matter of saying there is a way that we go about how we talk with the people that are inside the family of the organization. And if we do that well, then good or bad, we're going to be better off in the long run.
All right. Okay. So here's the crunchy part of this.
Uh-oh.
We've talked about how even if you're in a bad organization that doesn't have things run well, you as a leader, your obligation is to create a heaven inside of hell.
Okay.
Right? So let's say you understand that as the mid-level manager who has a team that would be very interested in this kind of information because it affects your team, you would want to give them a heads up. But you've been instructed now from on top not to do that. But you're open with your team, and where the rest of your organization might intentionally be holding back, your team is one where you have created a heaven inside of a hell, and you have been communicating, and you have said, anytime I can give you a heads up, I will. And so here might be an opportunity for you to be like, I said anytime I could, I would, but here I was actually sworn to secrecy about it, and so I couldn't. Or you could say, I'm going to enact our secret code that says I'm telling you something without actually telling you something kind of language, right? How would you handle it? Which means that you would need to have that kind of signal set up ahead of time that says I'm telling this in confidence, but I'm not actually telling you because we have deniability here. But I do want to give you a heads up if you're part of the 5%. Sure. Even if you're not part of the 5% and there's internal rumors about people going out, the first thing I'm going to wonder is whether or not my job is safe. Yeah. And I've got a great boss who's always created a heaven inside of this hell. And now he's going to be tempted to lie about it, right? Or to obfuscate it in some way. So how do you handle that?
Yes, right. Well, one, I think there's always a fundamental, which is that you as a leader, as a person walking around the world, that tell the truth.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you can always say everything that you know, right? But you should not say anything that is not true, because that will always come back at you. So there are many things that you could believe that you would not say out loud, or that you know that you would not say out loud. And that's actually a part of this, which is, and I think that's an important part of, I've sometimes mentioned Andy Crouch's book, I think it's called Strong and Weak, about where he defines this vulnerability power thing as the capacity for meaningful action and the capacity for meaningful risk. But he defines this idea that there are leaders where it's part of the burden of leadership that you're holding things that other people are not quite ready for. And that is part of it, right? And that you're working and gosh, I listened to a podcast with the New York Times, columnist Ross Douthat the other day, interviewing a woman who's written books on UFOs and people that have had encounters, and he's pressing her like, you've heard these stories, and because we'd all kind of want that knowing wink from the legislator that we know, being like, you need to run for the bunker now because the alien overlords are coming, right? That's what you're talking about here. So I think that what you can say is, when we communicate, and we often talk about communicating in probabilities, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's what's definitely going to happen, here's what might not happen, here's what definitely won't happen. When we do that, and then we can even say, hey, this part here, I'm not clear on where this is all going, right? And you may have a word in your mind that there's going to be, 2,000 layoffs, but you don't know that doesn't change an hour before the announcement, and it's actually 1,100 layoffs. So when you say, I'm not sure, right, that can absolutely be true. Right. So I think that you can do this, but the ultimate goal in all of this is make sure that you understand the hierarchy of your loyalty and what your obligations are as a leader and how you maintain and build that trust, because that's ultimately going to be much more powerful than just feeding the sugar rush of making sure that the
Right.
stock price is right because you told everybody externally, but didn't take care of the real important messaging.
Right. Yeah. And so then if there's an embargo on internal communication, a lot of people might be tempted to not even talk about the details of that embargo, right? But sharing, when you can talk, when you can, like, there's lots of things that you can share with people to set them at ease. Because mostly they're worried about, does this affect my job? Does this affect my salary? Does this affect my benefits package? And for you to be able to, at least deliver on what the real timeline on that communication is going to help people to kind of calm down a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, not saying that there's an admired leader way to make this easy, but the point about honesty, the point about building trust, even in these hard circumstances, is a good one. It's a great one.
And just being silent doesn't help because people are just going to make up bad news.
Yes, exactly. Definitely. No one ever fills the void with good news, right? When they don't know.
Never happens.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you for this conversation, and we'll talk tomorrow. Bye now.